Welcome back. Welcome back to the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television. And thank you so much for staying with us. We continue conversations this morning and we speak with Mr. Reginald McLean, the president of Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association. We're speaking this morning about sargassum concerns. I'm sure you are aware that there is a presence of sargassum again in our waters. And so we're talking about the impact on tourism here on the island of Tobago. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Reginald McLean.
Morning, and thank you for having me on your show this morning.
Of
And
course, a
thank you to
pleasure having you here.
all your viewers and listeners out there.
Of course, a pleasure having you on with us this morning. You are the president of the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Association, and we do know that one of our main attractions here on the island of Tobago is our beaches. And so we've seen an increase in sargassum again. It's not the first time we've seen sargassum on our beaches on the island of Tobago. And now here we are again in that position. And of course, there are concerns, and we're going to have the conversation this morning. But we want to get your perspective in terms of where we are right now in comparison to where we were last year and what we can do in terms of ensuring that the tourism product remains a product that is attractive even in the presence of the sargassum that is now on our beaches.
Well, firstly, what I'd like to say is that for the last about 8 or 9 days, we've had zero sargassum, which is good because we've been able to get every single thing we have on the beach off. I took some pictures this morning of the beach, and it is 100% clear. So that is a positive sign. For the month of April and May, we had the worst influx we've had. The people who do all the monitoring say that it was about 200% worse than the worst year we've had before. So at least now we seem to be getting back to normalcy in the sense of the beaches. Obviously, there's still a lot of beaches that aren't clear. We work on that tirelessly day and night to get things clear for the guests, whether they're local or foreign. So, I'm seeing a little positive there now, finally, but it's been tough.
It has been tough, and even we can't control. At least I'm not aware that we can control whether the sargassum appears or not. But when it appears, then not just the sight of it is a nuisance, but also the odor that comes from it is a very, very pungent smell that comes from it, and it can be sort of very off-putting. Um, what can you say is being put in place to ensure that we can clean up and cart away and to provide a space that is, I mean, I'm happy that we haven't had any for the past couple of days, as you've mentioned, but in terms of when it does appear, what is been put in place or what discussions are being had to ensure the cleanup and carting away of the sargassum that will not cause that sort of unsightliness, one, and as I mentioned before, that pungent smell that could be a deterrent from even our locals right here, and more so or tourists as they come to the island to enjoy our beaches.
Well, firstly, the pungent smell is hydrogen sulfide gas, which when it's rotting, that's what comes from the seaweed. It also attracts a lot of flies and it gets worms in it. So it's something that once it comes ashore and it starts to rot, you get that smell. Now, one thing that we haven't quite figured out yet, and I hope that the world is working on this, is that what is the long-term effects of smelling the hydrogen sulfide, which again smells like rotten eggs. What is the long-term effects on health? So when you drive past some of the villages, you can actually smell it as you drive past, and you may want to keep your windows up because it does get quite stink. Now, that smell, that gas that is emitted, also has a destructive force on things like televisions, air conditions, all electronic items like radios, etc. So it's not just a matter of smelling something; it's smelling something that does negative things. As far as cleanup, earlier this year we got the Tobago House of Assembly through the Chief Secretary to do a little bit of a commitment to helping us with some of the cleanup. and we got a little assistance there. But again, it's not enough in the sense that in 2024 we would have spent about $250,000 keeping the public beach clean. This year we haven't spent as much because we came up with different types of solutions to try and control it. But it gets to a point sometimes that the seaweed, you can only put your hand up and wait because it gets to that point where it is extremely bad. Now, one of the things that we have been able to do here is we have a little skid steer tractor, and in order to keep the place not smelling bad with the hydrogen sulfide, is we are continuously using the tractor and pushing it back into the sea, and hope in the hopes that Mother Nature takes it back out and makes it somebody else's issue. But at the end of the day, all beaches in Trinidad and Tobago are public beaches. And if I go back to memory when I was a younger fella, the government used to clean all the beaches. That hasn't happened in decades. So the only way that it's going to get done is through private sector and through organizations like the United Nations Development Program, where they are working with the Japanese government and coming in particularly into space side with some new equipment. But that's not going to help us for 2025. That's going to help us beyond 2025. So it's a bit of a getting the government on your side, getting the government to assist and get CPEP workers to help clean. But what do you do with the masses of Sargassum? Because it's tons and tons and tons. Yes, as you see from that picture there. There's only so much you can truck away and put in a landfill. And every time you move that sargassum off your beach with a tractor and a truck, you're taking about quarter of that load with sand as well from the beach. So you're taking away the sand that exists from Mother Nature. So we have that issue here at Blue Waters as well, where we are now getting ready to bring that sand back down to the beach. And we figure we have about 600 truckloads of sand that over the years have been carted away. Thankfully for us, it goes on our own property. So we know where it is. We just have to spend money to bring it back and put it on the beach. So it's a big concern. It's a costly concern. Um, whether the government is doing enough, I don't think so, because it affects all our people, especially in small villages where it's difficult, that you don't have much of a beach to get a tractor on to clean. It's a manual thing where you have to literally take people power and get the seaweed off the beaches. So it's a very hard thing. As far as tracking it, they're now tracking the sargassum with satellite, but we don't get enough real-time images that we could kind of predict when it's going to come on. So you go to sleep at night with a nice clean beach, you wake up in the morning, you may have 3 feet for the entire length of the beach and 100 feet out into the bay. So one never knows what to do and what to expect when one wakes up in the morning.
Mr. McLean, you spoke about the fact that there are other agencies who will assist in terms of moving the sargassum, not necessarily for the 2025 season, but beyond. Has any consideration or conversation been put into repurposing or reusing sargassum? Because we're talking about carting it away and where will we put it and stuff like that. But can it be reused? I've seen in instances before, I think it was last year or the year before, and I can't remember exactly where, but other countries, even Caribbean countries, have been using the sargassum after they collect them from off the beaches, repurposing them for other, whether it's fertilizer or fuel or energy or whatever they've been using it for. Has any conversation happened in our local Tobago space or even Trinidad and Tobago in terms of repurposing sargassum?
Well, I'm now looking up something I have here. I'm just trying to find it. Sargassum.com, a local industry here in Tobago. They are actually using the sargassum now to make body oils and soaps. So that's a positive thing coming out of Tobago. But you have to understand that the sargassum that you need for any type of project, you have to get it while it's still in the sea, because once it washes ashore, it's starting to mix with sand. So for Tobago, as I'm saying, this is a Tobago-based company, um, and it's Janique Mayers, who's the founder of Sargassum. And they've done a lot of testing, sent things abroad for um, to the international agencies for testing, and now they've come up with body oils and soap. So that's a positive. Earlier this year, I got an update out of St. Vincent that the St. Vincent government stopped all their farmers from using the sargassum for agriculture. So there's a lot of mixed things that are going on. Nobody's still quite sure what can happen with the sargassum. But the bottom line is, if you're going to use it for something, generally you have to get it while it's still in the sea. Now, there's another company that has started using it and making bricks out of it, and another one that's using it um, for fires, where they're making it almost like charcoal briquettes. So again, what's the long-term effects of that, burning it in a fire, for example, with the different chemicals that are made up in it? Time will tell. A lot of testing will tell. But at least we're getting one positive thing out of Tobago so far.
So it's still in the research sort of phase in terms of what it can be used for, and as you mentioned, of course, the long-term effects. The reference I was making, I think it was the blocks. I remember a couple of years ago, I can't remember exactly where they were using it to make building blocks. But as you mentioned now, and I never thought about it before, actually, the long-term effects. Because sometimes we think about the immediacy of the situation, is we want relief now, but in terms of how does it play out in the long term. So I suppose research is still ongoing where that is concerned as to how it can be repurposed in the safest possible way, so that there are no side effects, as it were, should we use it for building blocks, fires, or whatever we're going to be using it for, agriculture and the likes. In the Tobago instance, I know you mentioned earlier in the conversation that in the past couple of days we have not seen any, and you're hoping that Mother Nature will continue to be good to us. But in the event that she isn't, and there's an influx, where are we? Where are we where that is concerned? Is it that we still have to wait on the government to assist us? Are the stakeholders in terms of the tourism in Tobago, are they coming forward with, even if it's short-term solutions until something long-term can be put in place?
But I'll give you a little instance. If I bring a backhoe and two trucks to work on the beach, that costs about $7,000 or $8,000 a day, because they're working the equipment in a salt environment. Remember, when the backhoe is on the beach, salt is washing up on it. When they're loading it into the trucks, salt is going all over the trucks. So prices go up exponentially when people have to use equipment in areas that damages the equipment. So that is a cost that, if you need it for 3 days, that's 24,000. If you need it for 5 days, that's $40,000. And then you get it cleared by today, and tonight it comes in again, and you have to repeat the process all over. So we've come up with different ways. I mean, we have been pushing it into the sea with our skid steer tractor, and at the end of the day, we're using nets and literally corralling it off to one corner, and hoping overnight, when the tides change, the current shift, that some of it goes back out to sea. And we're doing a lot of things like that. We have two vehicles that we use on the beach every single day, but not so much in the last 8 days. And it's a lot of manual labor. So a lot of money is spent just keeping the public beach clean here at the hotel. And you can't leave it and let it lie, because the stench comes up, the guests complain, and they start checking out. You get phone calls every day for bookings of the hotel, and the first question out of locals, whether it be Tobago locals or Trinidad locals coming up, is, what's the sargassum like? So, for example, this morning I got a WhatsApp message update on the sargassum. We're coming this weekend. So I went and took 2 pictures of a beautiful, clear, clean beach this morning. But I don't know what it holds for tomorrow or the next day or the next day. We'll deal with those days when they arrive. So it's cost us a lot of business because even guests who have checked into the hotel, sometimes the day after they say they can't handle it and they leave. So you have to do as much as you possibly can to keep your area clean, keep the smell down, keep the flies out, and in hopes that eventually it disappears or people come up with some use for the sargassum, that the bulk of it can be taken away. We just live in hope.
And what a way to live. Of course, you have to live in hope. And but I'm really hoping that collaborations could be done in a quick time. And I welcome and invite what you mentioned earlier in terms of the United Nations. I think you said, and a company out of Japan coming to partner. And I do hope that those conversations can hasten and that action can be taken in the quickest possible time for the 2025 season. We just have to do what we can do at this point in time. And I do hope that all the stakeholders who are impacted by this will come on board and do their part in terms of ensuring that they can, move away, keep the areas clean, as you mentioned. And now it seems as if it's a personal responsibility for hoteliers or even the tourism industry to ensure that, our beaches can look the best that they can look based on the resources that we have here on the island of Tobago. In closing, is there any additional information or topic you want to raise where this is concerned?
Well, what I'd like to do is emphasize a little bit more about the United Nations Development Program. They got a grant through the country of Japan for quite a few million US dollars, and that is to go towards 5 islands in the Caribbean, Tobago being one of those islands, and more specifically, Speyside, Tobago. So we're looking forward to that equipment arriving. I believe some tractors arrived recently. We're then getting the barge that's going to be out at sea that picks up the sargassum and trucks to move it. So, but again, it comes down to long-term effects and how much maintenance we have to do on all this equipment while it's here in Speyside to make sure we get the longevity out of it. There's a lot going on. There's a lot that the government needs to get involved. The new Minister of Trade, Industry and Tourism, because at the end of the day, it affects us all. Now, I'll harp on one other thing here. We need a lot of airlift in Tobago to make Tobago work for tourism. Trinidad doesn't have that problem because all the flights go into Trinidad and then they're brought back to Tobago. The people are brought back to Tobago internationally or local. With Caribbean Airlines, since COVID, Tobago has not gotten back the required flights that it before COVID. We used to have 22 round trip flights on Caribbean Airlines on the small planes. That's down to 12. Tobago cannot survive on that. And, I'm just hoping that some of the powers that be may be listening to your program this morning that can drive that forward. We need airlift into Tobago very badly. And that's the only thing that's going to push our tourism product forward. So that's what I'd like to leave you with.
Brilliant point. That is a conversation we've had numerous times right here on the program under the morning show on Tobago Updates Television. I will continue that conversation at a later point where we have more time that we can dedicate to having it, of course. And we see your point, and we are totally agree with you in terms of the airlift situation here for Tobago. Mr. McLean, thank you so much for joining us this morning and having that conversation with us and bringing us up to speed as to where we are and what is happening even in the background where the sargassum is concerned here on the island of Tobago. We wish you the best for the rest of the season, and we hope that Mother Nature continues to be good to you and to all our hoteliers here on the island of Tobago. All right.
Thank you very much.
Of course, we have to go for a break now, viewers, and as we go, we invite you to help us. Share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back.